I knew something was wrong the minute I saw them together, but the truth was worse than I could have ever imagined. They weren't just having an affair, they were systematically trying to destroy everything I'd built. My name is Damian Porter, and I'm 38 years old. Most mornings I wake up at 5:30, drink my coffee on the back deck, and head to work managing HVAC projects across the county. For years, my wife Beatrice Porter shared that life with me. Hunter Green, a local systems technician who worked in our neighborhood, was just someone who fixed our Wi-Fi. Until he wasn't. The night they crashed my Porsche 911 Carrera, the car I'd spent 4 years rebuilding, was just the beginning of their deception. When the evidence finally surfaced, I refused to be their victim. Some might call what happened next excessive, but I call it necessary. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. The phone call came at 12:17 a.m. I was already in bed when my cell lit up the darkened room with an unfamiliar number. Something inside me, that quiet voice of instinct, told me to answer. "Mr. Porter, this is Officer Callahan with County PD. There's been an accident involving your vehicle on County Road 9, a black Porsche 911 Carrera." My stomach dropped. "Is anyone hurt?" "2 occupants, minor injuries. Your wife is one of them." I didn't ask about the second person. Didn't need to. Something in me already knew. The drive to the accident site was eternal. 20 minutes of white-knuckle grip on the steering wheel, my mind cycling through possibilities, each worse than the last. The rational part of me said there had to be an explanation. The deeper part knew better. County Road 9 was lit up like a carnival when I arrived, the spinning red and blue lights from 2 police cruisers and an ambulance splashing across the twisted metal of what used to be my pride and joy. The Porsche's front end was crumpled against a guardrail, headlight shattered, the hood buckled like paper. 4 years of weekend restoration work destroyed in seconds, but that wasn't what stopped me cold. It was Beatrice sitting on the curb, wrapped in a silver emergency blanket, mascara streaking her cheeks. And beside her, not the paramedics, not the officers, but Hunter Green, our neighborhood Wi-Fi guy, with his arm around my wife's shoulders like he had every right to be there. His forehead had a small bandage, and he was talking to her in low tones. I walked toward them, legs wooden. "Beatrice?" She looked up, her eyes widening. For a split second, I saw something flash across her face. Not relief, not gratitude, fear. "Damian," she stammered, pulling the blanket tighter. "I was going to call you." Hunter removed his arm from her shoulders, but too slowly, too reluctantly. The intimacy between them hung in the air. "What happened?" I asked, looking from her to the wreckage. "And why is Hunter here?" Beatrice swallowed. "It's not. I had a client lunch. Hunter was at the restaurant, and when I mentioned I was having trouble getting an Uber, he offered me a ride." I could smell the wine on her breath from where I stood. Both of them reeked of alcohol. "A ride? In my car?" "I was just trying to help out," Hunter interjected, his tone casual but eyes darting. A uniformed officer approached, stocky, mid-40s, with calm, assessing eyes. His nameplate read, "Callahan." "Mr. Porter?" He extended his hand. "Officer Reed Callahan." I responded to the call. I shook it numbly. "What exactly happened here?" Callahan glanced at his notepad. "According to statements, Mr. Green was driving your vehicle eastbound on County Road 9 when he lost control on the curve. Vehicle struck the guardrail, airbags deployed. Both occupants were wearing seatbelts, which likely prevented serious injury." "Wait, Hunter was driving my car?" I turned to Beatrice. "You let him drive the Porsche?" She looked away. "You never let me drive it. I just wanted to feel, I don't know, normal." Normal? The word hung in the air like smoke. There was nothing normal about any of this. "Were either of them drinking?" I asked Callahan. He gave me a measured look. "We performed a field sobriety test on Mr. Green. He was under the legal limit, but had consumed alcohol." A paramedic approached and spoke quietly to Callahan, who nodded. "Your wife checks out okay, Mr. Porter. She's free to go home if she'd like." He handed me a card. "The full accident report will be available in 3 to 5 business days. Insurance information has been exchanged." The drive home was tomb silent. Beatrice stared out the passenger window, clutching her phone to her chest like a talisman. I noticed her thumb flick across the screen several times, the blue glow illuminating her face in quick bursts. Text messages. Deleting them, most likely. I kept my eyes on the road and my questions to myself. Now wasn't the time. Evidence first, confrontation second. Inside our house, the kitchen lights felt too bright, too exposing. Beatrice avoided my gaze, fumbling with a glass of water. "So," I finally said, "who is Hunter to you? Really?" Her shoulders tensed. "I told you, he's just a friend, a neighbor who happened to be at the same restaurant. And that's why he was driving my car at midnight." "God, Damien!" She slammed the glass down. "Why are you being like this? I had a terrible night. I could have been killed. And all you care about is your precious car and making accusations." "I'm not accusing." "Yes, you are. I can see it in your face. You don't trust me. After 7 years, you still don't trust me." She stormed off to the bathroom, the door slamming behind her with theatrical force. I heard the shower start immediately. I didn't argue, didn't follow. I just stood there, memorizing every detail, every inconsistency in her story. Later, lying in bed with Beatrice pretending to sleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling and pieced together what I knew versus what I'd been told. The gap between those two things was growing by the minute. Some truths, I realized, would only surface when evidence forced them to, and I needed to be ready when they did. I woke at dawn, habit pulling me from sleep, despite the exhaustion weighing on my bones. Beatrice was still in bed, her breathing measured, face buried in the pillow. When I touched her shoulder, she groaned. "I can't get up," she mumbled. "The pain meds, they're making me dizzy." Her purse sat on the nightstand, orange prescription bottle visible inside. Convenient timing. "I'll make some coffee," I said, retreating from the bedroom. In the kitchen, morning sun streamed through windows, casting long rectangles across the tile floor. I'd stood in this same spot thousands of mornings, watching daylight crawl across the countertops while waiting for the coffee maker to finish. The rhythm of ordinary life continued even when everything else had fractured. After 2 cups of coffee, I called the repair yard where they'd towed the Porsche. The service manager didn't sugarcoat it. "It's totaled, Mr. Porter. Frame damage, deployed airbags, radiator crushed. Even the custom work you did. It's all gone. I'm sorry. Insurance adjuster's coming today." I hung up and stared at the wall calendar. 8 years ago today, I'd bought that car. A wreck with potential. I'd rebuilt it bolt by bolt, working weekends and evenings until my hands cramped. That car represented thousands of hours, a restoration project that marked my life's progress. Now it was scrap metal. When I returned to the bedroom, Beatrice was sitting up, scrolling through her phone. She quickly set it down when I entered. "They say the car's totaled." Her face fell into practiced sympathy. "Oh, Damien, I'm so sorry. Insurance will need statements about what happened." She stiffened slightly. "Actually, I've been thinking about that." She tucked hair behind her ear, a tell she had when preparing a lie. "Maybe we should just say you were driving." I kept my expression neutral. "Why would we do that? It would simplify everything. The insurance, the claims process. You know how these things get complicated." She reached for my hand. "Plus, Hunter could lose his job if this becomes a whole thing. He was just trying to help me." The calculation behind her eyes was almost audible. I pulled my hand away. "I'm going to shower," I said. By evening, Beatrice had transformed. She emerged from the bedroom dressed in the blue top I'd once mentioned liking. Hair-styled, makeup carefully applied despite her injuries. The kitchen filled with cooking smells. She was making lasagna, my favorite, something she hadn't done in months. "You feeling better?" I asked, watching her chop basil with surprising vigor for someone who'd been too medicated to stand that. "Much better." She smiled, touching my arm as she passed. I think I just needed rest. Throughout dinner, she chatted about meaningless things, neighborhood gossip, a show she wanted to watch, whether we should plan a weekend getaway. Her hand kept finding mine across the table, squeezing it with manufactured intimacy, as if the crash never happened. As if I hadn't seen Hunter with his arm around her. About last night, I finally said, setting my fork down. Your story doesn't add up. Her smile faltered. What do you mean? Hunter driving my car, the timing, why you were even with him in the first place. She pushed her plate away. I told you what happened. You told me several different things, actually. Something flashed behind her eyes. Not guilt, but annoyance at being questioned. Then her expression softened into hurt. You've been so distant lately, Damien. All those late nights at the project site, the weekends in the garage with that car. Her voice wavered perfectly. I've been lonely. Is it so hard to believe I might enjoy having lunch with someone who actually wanted to talk to me? I didn't respond. Just studied her. The calculated vulnerability. The way she'd flipped the script to make my suspicion the problem. Beatrice had always been skilled at emotional judo, redirecting any confrontation back at me. I'm going to clean up, I said, standing. The next day, while Beatrice was supposedly at her sister's, I logged into our phone account. The call history told its own story. Dozens of calls to Hunter over the past 3 months, some lasting over an hour. Texts in the hundreds, most during weekday afternoons when I was at work. I drove to Finley's restaurant where she claimed to have had her client lunch. The maitre d', a thin man with a pencil mustache, recognized me from previous anniversaries. Your wife? Yes. She was here. With a gentleman. He checked the reservation book. They arrived around 2, stayed until nearly 5. They seemed familiar with each other. 5 o'clock. The crash happened after midnight. Where were they for those 7 hours between? When I got home, Beatrice was folding laundry in the living room, humming to herself. She smiled when I walked in, as if the past 48 hours were just another chapter in our ordinary life. Hey you! How was your day? She asked, stacking towels with careful precision. Fine, I said, watching her performance of normalcy. Just fine. That night, after Beatrice fell asleep, I sat in the dark of our home office. My laptop screen illuminated my hands as I logged into our bank accounts, transferred half our savings to a new account in only my name, and froze our joint credit cards. Then I opened my email and typed a message to Maya Sterling, the attorney who'd handled my business partner's divorce last year. Subject: consultation request. Urgent and confidential. 2 days later, I sat in a corner booth at Westside Cafe, away from windows and familiar faces. The coffee between my hands had gone cold, but I barely noticed. I checked my watch for the 3rd time when the door chimed, and a woman in a charcoal suit walked in, scanning the room with practiced efficiency. Maya Sterling moved with the quiet confidence of someone who'd seen every dirty trick in the relationship playbook. She spotted me, nodded once, and approached. Damien Porter? She asked, extending her hand. Thank you for meeting me, I said, standing to shake it. She settled across from me, declined coffee, and placed a slim notebook on the table. Tell me everything. From the beginning. I walked her through it all. The crash, Beatrice's shifting stories, the calls to Hunter, the restaurant confirmation. When I mentioned Beatrice's suggestion to lie on the insurance claim, Maya's pen paused mid-note. She wanted you to claim you were driving? Said it would be simpler that way. For Hunter's sake. Maya's expression hardened. That's insurance fraud. And the fact she suggested it tells me 2 things. She's protecting him, and she's comfortable asking you to commit a crime to do it. The waitress refilled my mug. I waited until she was out of earshot before continuing. I froze our accounts. Was that a mistake? Legally, no. You're protecting marital assets, not hiding them. Maya tapped her pen against the notebook. But here's my advice. Document everything, but avoid direct confrontation for now. We need evidence before accusation. What kind of evidence? Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, the insurance report from the crash, anything that contradicts her story. She leaned forward. And Damien? Don't move out of your house. Don't agree to anything verbally. Every communication goes through me first. I nodded, feeling the first sense of solid ground in days. One more thing, she added. If she's as calculating as you say, expect her to strike first. People who control narratives don't wait to be exposed. Maya's words proved prophetic. That afternoon, a courier knocked on my door with a thick manila envelope. Inside were temporary separation papers filed by Beatrice Porter, alleging emotional manipulation and financial control. She demanded spousal support, exclusive use of our home, and restoration of all joint accounts. The accusations read like fiction about a stranger. Petitioner has endured a pattern of controlling behavior. Respondent's sudden freezing of accounts represents financial abuse. Petitioner fears for her safety and stability. My hands shook, not with anger, but with the disorienting feeling of watching someone rewrite reality. In her version, I was the villain. The affair, the crash, the lies, all conveniently absent. I photographed each page and texted them to Maya with a simple message. You were right. She struck first. Beatrice returned home around 7, shopping bags in hand, acting surprised to find me in the living room. "Oh, you're home early," she said, her voice light. "Did you forget something?" I held up the legal papers. "Like telling me you filed for separation?" Her expression shifted so quickly it was almost impressive. Surprise to indignation to calculated hurt. "You made me do this, Damien." She set her bags down carefully. "Freezing our accounts? Checking up on me? Your behavior forced my hand." "What about your behavior, Beatrice? The lies about the crash? Hunter? The affair?" "There you go again with your paranoia." She sighed dramatically. "This is exactly why I needed legal protection." I stood, keeping my voice level. "You crashed more than a car, Beatrice." Something cold flashed in her eyes, the mask slipping to reveal calculation beneath. "Be careful, Damien," she said, voice dropping. "If you try to ruin me, I'll take you down with me. Who do you think people will believe? The controlling husband or the frightened wife?" I didn't answer immediately. Emotion would only give her leverage. "I believe the evidence," I finally said. She retreated to the guest bedroom, slamming the door behind her. That night, I sent Maya digital copies of everything I'd gathered. Phone records, the statement from Finley's, and something I'd just discovered. 3 hotel charges on our joint credit card, all tied to Beatrice's name, all on afternoons when she claimed to be at client meet. Before going to bed, I paused at the hallway credenza where our wedding photo stood in a silver frame. Beatrice's smile looked back at me, bright and promising. I picked up the frame, studying the woman in white who'd promised forever. Maybe she never existed at all. I returned the photo to its place, face down. 3 mornings later, I parked outside Maya's downtown office building. The morning air felt clean, almost therapeutic after days in a house that had become a psychological war zone. Maya's office was exactly what I expected, methodical and focused, like she was. Files aligned perfectly on her desk, diplomas hung straight on the wall, and a single plant thrived in the corner. No clutter, no distractions. "Good morning, Damien." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Let's dig in." I handed her the folder I'd prepared. "Everything I could find is here." She spread the documents across her desk like she was assembling puzzle pieces. Phone logs, bank statements, location history from our shared family tracking app that Beatrice had forgotten to disable. "Interesting pattern," Maya said, tapping a highlighted section of the phone log. "These calls to Hunter's number go back nearly 6 months, always during your work hours." I had no idea. "Most people don't." "That's how affairs work." She flipped to the credit card statements. "Here, Finley's restaurant charges on your joint card. And here," she pointed to hotel invoices from the Lakeside Inn. 3 separate afternoon bookings, all paid with your shared account." My stomach tightened. The evidence looked so clinical on paper. Just dates and dollar amounts that represented the systematic dismantling of my marriage. "I remember her coming home those nights," I said quietly. "She'd talk about client meetings running late. I made her dinner on 2 of those nights." Maya nodded, her expression softening briefly. "That's why we're doing this, Damien. Not for revenge, for truth." She picked up her phone and made a quick call. "Derek, We need the valet footage from Finley's for April 12th between 7 and 9 p.m. She glanced at me. My investigator is good. If there's footage, he'll get it. By noon he had. Maya set up her laptop, and we watched grainy security footage from Finley's valet stand. There was Beatrice, laughing, her hand on Hunter's arm as they exited the restaurant. Then, the valet brought my Porsche around, my car, the one I'd spent years restoring. Hunter took the keys, sliding behind the wheel while Beatrice got in the passenger side. She leaned over, kissed him, and they drove away. "So much for the 'he just offered me a ride' story," Maya said. I felt numb. What now? Now we prepare for court. The hearing for temporary orders is in 10 days. She closed her laptop. Meanwhile, you need to be perfect. No arguments, no accusations, no social media posts. Nothing she can use. I'm barely speaking to her anyway. Good. Keep it that way. Her next move will likely be to provoke you, make you look unstable or aggressive. Don't take the bait. I nodded. I can handle it. One more thing. Maya handed me a business card. This is Dr. Levine, a therapist who specializes in betrayal trauma. Call him. This isn't just legal, it's emotional survival. That evening, I noticed Beatrice had been busy on social media. New pictures showed her looking wistful at a coffee shop, captioned with phrases like, "finding strength again," and, "sometimes the ones closest to us cause the deepest wounds." Her friends had left supportive comments, clearly assuming I was the villain in her carefully crafted narrative. I put my phone away and went to the garage. The empty space where my Porsche once sat felt symbolic now, a void created by betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from Beatrice. "You'll regret trying to make me look bad." I didn't respond. Maya's words echoed in my head. Don't take the bait. The next morning, Maya called early. "We've got a date," she said. "The hearing is set for the 28th. Judge Benton, she's fair, but no nonsense. What do I need to prepare? Just be ready with your documentation and witnesses. The valet from Finley's has agreed to testify about seeing them regularly, and the insurance adjuster will confirm Hunter was driving. What about Beatrice? She'll have her story. But stories collapse under evidence." I set the phone down after we hung up, taking slow, steady breaths. For weeks, I'd been living in a house of lies, watching Beatrice construct her alternate reality. In 10 days, those lies would face something they couldn't manipulate or charm, documented facts in a courtroom. I wasn't looking forward to the hearing. But for the first time since that midnight call about the crash, I felt something like hope. I arrived at the courthouse an hour early. The marble floors echoed with each step as Maya and I made our way to courtroom 4B. My hands were clammy around the manila folder containing everything: bank statements, phone records, the hotel receipts, all organized with color-coded tabs that Maya had insisted on. "Deep breaths," Maya said, noticing my tense shoulders. "Remember, we're not here for drama. We're here for facts." We settled at our table, spreading out documents. Maya checked her watch periodically, her calm presence steadying me while my insides churned like an engine with dirty oil. The courtroom still smelled of wood polish and stale coffee, reminding me of sitting in the principal's office as a kid, waiting for judgment. At exactly 9:45, the double doors swung open. Beatrice walked in wearing a cream-colored dress, hair perfectly styled, looking every bit the wounded innocent. Her lawyer, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit, walked beside her carrying a sleek leather portfolio. And there was Hunter, trailing behind them like some reluctant accessory, tugging at his collar, eyes darting around the room. "Don't react," Maya whispered, placing her hand briefly on my arm. I kept my face neutral, but seeing Hunter here, in person, not just on security footage, made my jaw tighten. This was the man who'd crashed my car after taking my wife. Now he was playing supportive friend in court? The audacity burned in my chest. Judge Benton entered, a stern-faced woman with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. After preliminaries, Beatrice's lawyer stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced smoothness. "Your Honor, Mrs. Porter has endured months of controlling behavior from her husband. When she finally sought independence, simple afternoon outings with friends, client meetings, Mr. Porter became obsessively suspicious. He painted a picture I barely recognized. Me as some jealous tyrant, Beatrice as a trapped bird. According to him, I'd been financially abusive by freezing accounts, emotionally manipulative by questioning her whereabouts, and unreasonably fixated on the car accident. The night of the unfortunate crash, he continued, Mr. Green merely offered Mrs. Porter a ride home when she felt unwell. Mr. Porter has since used this incident to further isolate and control my client. Hunter, Mr. Green, nodded solemnly at appropriate moments, playing his part. Beatrice dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue. When Maya's turn came, she didn't immediately stand. She let the silence linger, then rose unhurriedly. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence rather than accusations. She methodically laid out the timeline, not with emotional language, but with documented proof. The phone record showing hundreds of texts between Beatrice and Hunter. The credit card statements with hotel charges. The location data putting them together when Beatrice claimed to be elsewhere. Then came the valet video, played on a monitor for the court. There was no mistaking what we were seeing. Hunter sliding behind the wheel of my Porsche with a glass of wine still in his hand, Beatrice leaning over to kiss him before they drove away. The timestamp showed 8:43 p.m., barely 2 hours before the crash. Finally, Maya presented the text messages retrieved from cloud backups. Your Honor, particularly concerning is this exchange from the hospital, where Mrs. Porter texted Mr. Green, "Delete everything. I'll tell Damien you were just giving me a ride. He trusts me too much." The courtroom fell silent. Judge Benton studied Beatrice over her glasses, then looked directly at her. "Mrs. Porter, did you or did you not ask your husband to claim he was driving the vehicle that night?" Beatrice froze. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably beside her. The silence stretched, becoming its own kind of testimony. "Mrs. Porter?" the judge pressed. "I was in shock," Beatrice finally whispered. "I wasn't thinking clearly." The judge's expression hardened. "That doesn't answer my question." More silence. "I'll take that as confirmation," Judge Benton said. She shuffled papers, then delivered her ruling. Beatrice's request for spousal support was denied. I was granted exclusive use of the house. The financial misconduct would be noted for future proceedings. "This court does not look kindly on deception, Mrs. Porter," she concluded, "nor on attempting to involve others in insurance fraud." As we left the courtroom, Beatrice cornered me in the hallway, her face flushed with anger. "You think you've won," she hissed, her voice low but venomous. "This isn't over." I met her gaze steadily. "It never is with people who lie." Hunter hung back, suddenly fascinated by his shoes. The mask of supportive friend had slipped, revealing someone who realized he'd backed the wrong horse. Outside on the courthouse steps, Maya shook my hand. "Congratulations. Round 1 goes to truth." "What happens now?" I asked, watching Beatrice and Hunter walk toward a borrowed sedan in the parking lot. "She'll retaliate," Maya said matter-of-factly. "People like her always do. They can't stand being exposed." I nodded, my stomach knotting as I watched them drive away together. The victory felt hollow somehow, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I knew this was just the beginning. 2 days after the hearing, I woke up feeling something close to peace for the first time in weeks. The house was quiet. No tension, no walking on eggshells. I made coffee and sat on the back porch, watching the morning light filter through the trees. For a moment, just a moment, I allowed myself to believe the worst might be behind me. My phone buzzed. A text from work. "Can you come in early today? HR needs to see you." Something in my chest tightened. I'd been with Midwest Mechanical for almost 8 years without a single issue. What could HR possibly want? I showered and dressed quickly, my mind racing. By the time I reached the office, my temporary calm had evaporated completely. Janice from HR waited in the small conference room, her expression carefully neutral. Beside her sat Tom, the company's legal counsel. Never a good sign. "Damien, thank you for coming in," Janice began. "We've received a concerning report about your behavior." "My behavior?" I echoed. She slid a printed email across the table. This was submitted through our anonymous reporting system. It claims you've been exhibiting violent tendencies at home and may have substance abuse issues that could affect workplace safety. I scanned the email, my blood turning cold. The allegations were ridiculous, claims I'd thrown objects during arguments, that I'd been drinking heavily since the separation, that my coworkers should be warned about my instability. "This is completely false," I said, keeping my voice level. "Every word of it." Tom cleared his throat. "We understand you're going through a difficult personal situation. We're required to investigate any safety concerns." "Who sent this?" I asked, though I already had my suspicions. "It came from a personal email," Janice said hesitantly. "Our IT department traced it to an IP address associated with someone named Marisa Alvarez." "Beatrice's sister?" "Of course." "My wife's sister," I confirmed. "She's never even been to my workplace." "This is part of an ongoing attempt to damage my reputation during divorce proceedings." I could see uncertainty flicker across Janice's face. She'd known me for years, had seen my consistent work record. "I can provide documentation from my recent court hearing," I added. "The judge already noted my wife's deceptive behavior." The meeting ended with assurances they'd take my explanation into consideration, but the damage was already done. Walking back to my desk, I felt colleagues' eyes on me, wondering what I'd been called in for. I stepped outside during lunch and called Maya. "They're escalating," she said after I explained. "This is classic scorched earth tactics. Stay calm, document everything, and forward me that HR email. We'll need electronic evidence of where it originated." That evening, an email from Beatrice appeared in my inbox. The subject line read, "Final offer. Damien. My attorney advises me to be generous, so here it is. I want half of all assets, including your retirement accounts and equity in the house. In exchange, I'll agree to a no-fault divorce. If you refuse, I'll make sure the court sees who you really are. You won't just lose money, you'll lose everything. You have 48 hours to respond. Beatrice." I forwarded it to Maya without replying, then spent the next morning gathering evidence. Screenshots of the IP address from HR, copies of Beatrice's threatening email, and phone records showing multiple calls between Beatrice and her sister the day before the complaint was filed. Maya called around noon. "I've filed an emergency motion to expose this interference. The judge needs to see the pattern of harassment." I was about to thank her when the doorbell rang. A courier stood on my porch with another legal envelope. Inside was a court summons. Beatrice had filed an additional claim accusing me of hiding assets and demanding emergency financial disclosures. According to her sworn statement, I'd been systematically concealing funds to prevent fair division of property. I sat in my living room that night, staring at the empty space in the driveway where the Porsche once sat. The house felt hollow, stripped of the life we'd built. But not by me, by her. "You already took everything you could," I whispered to the empty room. "Now it's my turn." I walked into Maya's office with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The morning light streamed through her windows, highlighting dust particles dancing in the air. Her assistant nodded at me sympathetically as I passed. "I want to file," I said, not bothering with pleasantries as I sat across from Maya. "Full divorce proceedings. No more temporary orders or half measures." Maya closed the folder she'd been reviewing and gave me her full attention. "You're sure? Once we file, there's no walking this back. I've never been more certain of anything." The words felt solid in my mouth, like stones I'd been polishing for weeks. She nodded and pulled out a legal pad. "We'll file for divorce on grounds of marital misconduct. Given what we already have, I recommend full financial disclosure from both parties. We'll request all text messages, emails, and financial records." "Will that force Hunter to testify?" I asked. "Yes. We'll depose both of them under oath." Maya began drafting notes with quick, practiced strokes. "The judge already has concerns about Beatrice's credibility after the separation hearing. We'll build on that." I remembered the toy trucks my father would line up for me when I was 5, showing me how each one had a job in construction. This felt similar. Methodical pieces creating something solid from rubble. "Here's how we'll proceed," Maya continued. "All business now. First, we file the petition today. Then we'll schedule depositions within 10 days. I want full transparency, every bank statement, every receipt, every text. We'll create a timeline that proves the affair predated the accident and establish a pattern of deception." She looked up from her notes. "This won't be pleasant, Damien. She'll fight dirty." "She already has," I replied. "But lies only work in the dark." Within an hour, I'd signed the initial paperwork. Maya promised to have it filed by day's end. Walking out of her office, I felt lighter, though not exactly happy. It reminded me of having a rotted tooth pulled. The pain of extraction followed by the strange relief of something poisonous finally gone. The depositions began the following week. Hunter went first, visibly uncomfortable in the conference room's harsh lighting. Under Maya's questioning, his story unraveled quickly. He claimed he'd only known Beatrice for a month before the accident. The phone records showed 8 months of regular contact. He insisted they'd only met for lunch that day. Receipts showed a hotel room charged to Beatrice's credit card at 2:47 p.m., hours before dinner at Finley's. When Maya showed him the valet footage of him sliding behind the wheel of my Porsche with a glass of wine still in hand, he stammered and looked toward Beatrice's lawyer for help. "Just tell the truth, Mr. Green," Maya said quietly. "You were intoxicated when you got behind the wheel, weren't you?" "I'd had a couple drinks," he admitted finally. The hospital report Maya subpoenaed confirmed his blood alcohol level at 0.06. Not legally drunk, but enough to affect judgment. The same report noted Beatrice had declined a breathalyzer at the scene. Maya saved her most devastating evidence for Beatrice's deposition 3 days later. "Mrs. Porter, please examine this document," Maya said, sliding a printout across the table. "This is the metadata from the anonymous HR complaint filed against your husband. Can you explain why it originated from your iPad at 11:17 p.m. on March 18th, while you were still residing in the marital home?" Beatrice's eyes widened. Her attorney whispered something urgently. "I don't have to answer that," she said finally. "You do, actually," Maya corrected her. "You're under oath." What followed was 20 minutes of Beatrice stumbling through contradictions until she finally cracked. "Fine," she shouted, tears streaking her makeup. "You want the truth? He was never supposed to find out. We were careful for months until that stupid accident. He never gave me anything I wanted. Not attention, not freedom, nothing." Hunter listened to me. Hunter made me feel alive. Her lawyer tried to call for a break, but Beatrice was beyond control. "You think you're so perfect," she hissed at me across the table. "So righteous. But you drove me to this with your routine and your precious car you cared about more than me." I just watched her, saying nothing. The court reporter's fingers flew over her stenotype machine, capturing every word. The next morning, I signed the final divorce filing in Maya's office. The document felt heavy in my hands. 15 pages summarizing the end of 8 years together. "What happens now?" I asked. "The court will schedule the final hearing," Maya replied. "Given the evidence, I expect a favorable judgment." That night, my phone buzzed with a message from Beatrice. "We could still fix this. Please call me." I deleted it without reply and went to bed early. 2 weeks later, I stood in the courthouse lobby, watching morning sunlight filter through tall windows. This would be the last time I'd face Beatrice in court. The last confrontation. I straightened my tie and took a deep breath. Whatever happened today, it would finally be over. Inside the courtroom, Judge Harold Benton surveyed both parties with the impartial gaze of a man who'd seen every variation of broken vows imaginable. The wood-paneled room felt both too warm and too cold at once. I sat beside Maya, my hands folded on the table, watching Beatrice whisper urgently to her attorney. She'd worn a conservative navy dress, hair pulled back, playing the role of the dignified wife even now. The bailiff called the court to order. "Porter versus Porter, final dissolution hearing," he announced. Beatrice's lawyer spoke first, rising with a practiced expression of concern. "Your Honor, my client has endured significant emotional distress throughout these proceedings. While we acknowledge certain indiscretions occurred, Mrs. Porter maintains that the marriage deteriorated due to mutual neglect." We ask the court to consider an equitable distribution that recognizes her contributions as a spouse. Judge Benton nodded slightly, then turned to Maya. Counsel? Maya stood, calm and precise. Your Honor, this case isn't about indiscretions or neglect. It's about systematic deception, financial misconduct, and deliberate attempts to damage my client's reputation and livelihood. She placed a binder on the bench. We've prepared a comprehensive exhibit of evidence, including time-stamped communications between Mrs. Porter and Mr. Green dating back 8 months before the accident, financial records showing marital funds diverted to hotel rooms and gifts, and documented attempts to file false insurance claims. Judge Benton opened the binder, reviewing each section methodically. I kept my expression neutral, though my heart hammered against my ribs. Across the aisle, Hunter shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He'd been added to the proceedings due to the property damage claim. Additionally, Maya continued, the court should consider Exhibit D, which confirms Mrs. Porter filed false workplace complaints against Mr. Porter from a device registered in her name, constituting harassment and attempted interference with employment. Beatrice dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The performance was flawless, shoulders trembling, mascara carefully smudged. I remembered how she'd cried exactly the same way when we watched sad movies together. The hearing continued for nearly 2 hours. Each document Maya presented told another piece of the story: receipts from restaurants where Beatrice claimed to be alone but wasn't, text messages where she mocked our marriage to Hunter, bank withdrawals timed perfectly with hotel bookings. Through it all, I maintained my silence, not from fear, but resolve. When asked if I wished to make a statement, I simply said, "The evidence speaks for itself, Your Honor. I trusted my wife completely. She violated that trust repeatedly, then tried to destroy my reputation when caught. I ask only for what's fair." Judge Benton called a 15-minute recess to review the materials. Those minutes stretched like hours. Beatrice attempted to catch my eye across the room, but I focused on the wall clock, counting seconds. When the judge returned, his expression had hardened. "Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, I'm prepared to rule," he announced. "Dissolution of marriage is granted on grounds of marital misconduct." He turned to the financial matters. "Mr. Porter shall retain full ownership of the marital home and all retirement accounts. Mrs. Porter is ordered to reimburse legal fees in the amount of $22,450 and repay $8,175 in marital funds inappropriately used during the affair." Each word landed like a hammer. Beatrice's tissue crumpled in her fist. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "regarding the vehicular property damage, Mr. Green is held liable for civil damages in the amount of $57,000, as established by the insurance valuation." Judge Benton looked directly at Beatrice. "The court finds the petitioner engaged in deliberate deceit, both during the marriage and throughout these proceedings. This finding will be noted in the final decree." The gavel fell with finality. Court is adjourned. Beatrice's tears transformed from calculated performance to genuine panic. Her attorney whispered something that made her shake her head vigorously. As we filed into the hallway, Beatrice stepped directly into my path. Her perfect facade had crumbled, replaced by raw desperation. "You'll regret this someday," she muttered, voice barely above a whisper. I met her eyes directly for the first time in months. "I already did," I replied coldly. "The day I trusted you." Without waiting for her response, I followed Maya toward the exit. Each step carried me farther from the wreckage of promises that had once been my marriage. The heavy courthouse doors swung open, revealing a world washed in sunlight. I stepped outside, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. A man finally untethered from deceit. 8 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in my garage on a Saturday morning, hands covered in engine grease, classic rock playing from an old radio on the workbench. Sunlight spilled through the open garage door, catching on metal tools and warming the concrete floor. The skeleton of a 1967 Mustang Fastback sat before me, my newest project, found at an estate sale for a price that made the hours of restoration work ahead worth every minute. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and stepped back to admire the progress. The body was stripped down to bare metal, ready for primer. The engine block sat partially rebuilt on a stand nearby. Unlike the Porsche, that gleaming symbol of status Beatrice had helped destroy, this car would be entirely mine, every bolt and wire placed by my hands alone. This is therapy, I murmured to myself, running my fingers along the curve of the fender. My phone buzzed on the workbench. Maya Sterling's name lit up the screen. "Good morning, Damien," she said when I answered. Her voice carried the same steady confidence I'd come to rely on through the worst months of my life. "Just calling to let you know we received confirmation that the insurance settlement check cleared, and Beatrice's final attorney fee repayment has been processed." "That's good news," I replied, leaning against the workbench. "Everything's squared away then?" "Completely. The garnishment order remains in place for the remaining balance, but otherwise, you're officially free and clear." She paused. "How are you doing these days?" I glanced around the garage. Organized tools, clean floors, no tension in the air. "Better than I expected. The house is quiet now, but it's a good quiet." After we hung up, I checked my bank account on my phone. There it was again. The monthly deposit labeled Porter Settlement, right on schedule. The court had garnished Beatrice's wages after she missed 2 consecutive payments. Now the money arrived without fail. Each deposit a small reminder that actions have consequences. I remembered how she'd once laughed about the Porsche being just a car. Now she paid for it, month after month, from her salary at the furniture outlet where she'd taken a job after everything fell apart. Through Carl, our mutual acquaintance who managed the local hardware store, I'd heard pieces of what happened after. Beatrice and Hunter's relationship had imploded less than 4 months after the divorce was finalized. The fantasy crumbled under real-world pressure. Hunter lost his contractor job when clients learned about the crash and his role in it. He defaulted on the insurance judgment, then left town for a fresh start, somewhere in Arizona. Beatrice had tried calling him repeatedly, Carl mentioned. Hunter eventually blocked her number. She now rented a small apartment in the complex near the freeway, the one with paper-thin walls and constant traffic noise. Sometimes I saw her Kia in the grocery store parking lot and deliberately shopped in different aisles, not from lingering pain, but because there was simply nothing left to say. I closed the garage door as evening approached, satisfied with the day's progress on the Mustang. The frame was solid. A good foundation matters. That's something I understood better now than ever before. Later that week, I took the Mustang out for its first test drive since completing the engine rebuild. The car wasn't pretty yet, primer gray and missing interior panels, but the mechanical heart was sound. I rolled down the windows and headed for the county highway that curved along the reservoir. The engine hummed steadily beneath me, responsive and powerful. Wind rushed through the open windows, carrying away the last ghosts of bitterness I'd been harboring. The road stretched ahead, empty and inviting. People sometimes asked if I missed the Porsche, that gleaming symbol of everything I thought we were building together. The truth was, I didn't. That car belonged to a different life, one built on illusions I couldn't see through until they shattered. What I had now was something better. A life without lies. A home that was truly mine. And yes, a car I was rebuilding with my own 2 hands. Every part chosen with care. Every connection secure. If you've ever lost something you thought was essential, you know the strange revelation that follows. Sometimes what breaks wasn't what you needed after all. When the truth finally caught up, it didn't just cost them my trust, it cost them everything they thought they could keep. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.